In this video, we're going to go over how to apply layers and some template styles to drawings. Now, in the previous module, we went over how to adjust the properties of your geometry. So that's changing things like the color, the line weight, and the line type. However, the way we were doing it, we had to adjust each line individually, and we had to come up here and set all three of these every time we made a line. Excuse me. Which can be sort of an inefficient way to put all of our different line types and all of our different features of our lines together to have to go change them one by one. So that's where things like layers can come in handy to make it a bit easier for us. So right here in the middle of the home toolbar is the layers tab. And we have here our layers drop down. So if I click on this, it'll give me a little drop down of all of the layers I can choose. By default, in a completely blank AutoCAD drawing, when you first launched AutoCAD, there's only one layer, and that's layer 0. And layer 0 has to exist. So we can't get rid of layer 0, but we can add additional layers to it. And there are some settings associated with layers 2 that we're going to go over in the next video. So to add new layers into my project or additional ones, I'm going to click on Layer Properties, and that'll open up the Layer Properties menu. I can click on this side part and drag it to move it around. And I can also, if yours starts off like a little bit smaller, you can just hover over the bottom corner until you get that little diagonal drag, hold, and you can make it larger. So within here, we can make new layers, and we can control some of the different features associated with them, such as the color, the line type, and the line weight. So to make a new layer, you're going to click on this button here, and if I hover over it, we can see that it's the button for new layer, or I can hit Alt and the letter N on my keyboard. So that's another little trick too regarding your certification exam is if they ever ask you something and you're not sure of what the button does, anytime you hover over a button without clicking on it, it'll tell you what the button is. So if I click on that, it makes a new layer. By default, they call it layer 1. So I'm just going to call this my object layer. So this is going to be the lines that I consider object lines in my drawings. And I'll just click off that to stop typing in there. If I wanted to rename it, I could do what I call a slow double click, which is I click, but you leave like a little, like a second or so in between. Or if I right click on the layer name, I can rename it, and we can also see that there's a keyboard shortcut of F2 to rename it. So a couple of ways we can do that. Then I can control whether or not the layer is visible or not, which, like I said, will go in the next video, if it's frozen or locked. This setting right here will control if that layer prints or not. Then we have the color of the line, and all I need to do to change something like that is just to click on it, and then I can pick a color, and I can choose from this menu here, or there's even a couple other menus of different colors that I can choose from. I'm just going to leave this one as a white line. It's line type, which for this I'll leave as continuous, and then it's line weight. So again, that's just click on it, and then we can scroll to find the line weight that we want. So then to make another new layer, I'll just click on this button here again, and this time I'll make a layer called hidden, and I'll just click off of that to finish naming it. This time I'll change the color just for fun, really for no other reason than that. And I'm going to change the color to a light gray, or rather just to show you how to change things instead of just for fun. And I'll change its line type, so I'll just click on where it says continuous, and just like with those properties, I'll have to click on load, and then I'll scroll down in this list and I'll load in a hidden line. Okay. And then I have to come here and click on it again. Okay. And I can change the line weight. And our hidden lines are usually a little bit thinner than our object lines, so I'll change it to be 0.5. And again, I'll make another layer, and I'll call like this one dimension. And I'll change this one's color to red, just so it will be easier for me to tell the difference in my drawings between dimensions and the rest of the drawing. I'll change the line type back to continuous, and I'll change this line weight to be thinner. I'll change it to be 0.35. And I'll make another layer too, and I'll just call this one guidelines, or rather I'll name it def points. And I'm gonna make the color, I'll make it this dark blue just because it's kind of hard to see the dark blue on the black screen. And what we can see here is that when I called it def points, see how, see how that little plot button got grayed out? That's because this specific layer has to be something that's an invisible line. So, and let me make it thin too. So that means this layer is going to be guide work that if I go to print or plot my drawing, this layer won't print out. And I can even show too that if I just call it guides, enter, I can make it where the layer doesn't print. So even if I just didn't want to necessarily call it def points, but I wanted to call it just like guide work, if I have it where it's got that little no symbol next to it, that means that anything I do in that layer won't print. So I can do a lot of guide work, set the drawings up, maybe align different views in that layer, and not have to worry about erasing the lines after the fact because that layer doesn't print. So now that I have a couple of different layers set up, I've got their colors and their line types set up, and I can load in more line types for more layers if I needed to. For right now, just to practice, we've got a couple in there, but if I was doing like an architectural drawing, I'd have a lot more layers in there with a lot more different settings. Particularly in architectural drawings, we use a lot of layers with a lot of colors to just kind of help easily distinguish those colors in there. Because since we're working with such large scale drawings, defining the line weight here isn't as useful as using different colors and then referring to something called a color plot table where different colors print as different line weights. So I'll just X out of my layer properties manager right up here. And now if I come to this drop down, so if I click on here, I see my different types of layers. And all I have to do is click on one of the layers, and I can see here that it changed my properties bar to just say that, well, it's doing the color by layer, it's doing the line weight by the layer, and it's doing the line type. Versus if I switch over to hidden, we can see that all three of those changed. And if I go to draw a line, I'll just draw a small line across. It's automatically a hidden line. I don't have to worry about switching any of those features or things up. The only thing is that I can't see the line weights currently, and that's just because I have that setting turned off. And so that's this little button down here, or keyboard shortcut LW display, as we can see it says. And if this button isn't there, you just click on this little customization, and then you can make that button appear or disappear in the settings toolbar. So now you can override some of these things, so that's why it says by layer. But let's say I wanted all the features of a hidden line, but I just wanted it to be a different color. I can come here and say, okay, but I just want it to be green. And that's why it no longer says by layer, it just says green. And if I go to draw a line, it'll have all those features, but it'll be green. Now, the issue with doing something like that is just that you have to be careful and remember that you might have changed things like that, because then I could go into the dimension layer, and it did switch me over to dimension because I clicked on it, but it still is going to make the line green because I've told it to override whatever I'm doing and just make green. So you just have to be a little careful about that. So one thing I try to do as much as possible is just to switch over my layers rather than switch over my properties here, because now that it says by layer, if I switch layers around, it'll just switch all of the different settings associated with it. So one of the benefits of layers is after you set them up is oftentimes you're going to be using the same properties and the same layers over and over again. So you can set up what's called a template file. So if I go to the start page here, a lot of times I'll just start a drawing by clicking on this start tab or clicking on start drawing here. And let me move the keyboard out of the way for a moment. But if I click on this word templates here, there's actually different types of templates that I can use to make drawings. So for instance, if I go to this, where's the architecture one? This tutorial iArc, this DWT file means that it's a template. So it means that it's going to open up a completely blank drawing. However, it's going to be set up for some architectural style drawing. So it already has a sheet set up with an architectural title block, and it also has several layers set up for us automatically, so we don't have to go and add those layers in every single time we make a drawing. Right now what we're in is called Paperspace, and we'll go over that at the end of the module, so for just getting ready to print things out. But if I just click on this model tab down here, I'm back in model space. And I'll have all of my different layers where I can go and draw in my walls, my plumbing, my windows. And it has a couple of different settings associated with each one of those layers. If I go back into my own drawing, drawing one, and let me just move this back over here now. So if I go back into my own drawing, I have all of my lines, all of my layers, but maybe let's say I even wanted to have it set up where I already had these guidelines in here for whatever reason, or maybe I have just kind of some drawing references that I want to be able to easily copy and paste into other drawings. And I want all of these layers into all of my drawings. I can actually save this as a template file itself by clicking on Save As, making sure that I'm saving it to my flash drive, and then changing the file type at the bottom to an AutoCAD drawing template, a DWT, and then it accidentally bumped me, or didn't accidentally, it just bumped me back into the template folder. So I'm just going to click up here and again just say I want to do it on my flash drive, and I'm just going to call it template, and I'll click save. And it says, do you want to use, or rather it's kind of just asking, how do you want to describe this template? And I usually just click OK. I don't change much in there. So what can be useful with this is now, if I just go to start a new drawing with that, so if I go to my flash drive and I just double click on this template file, it opened up a brand new drawing, so it called it drawing 3, and it has all of my layers in here automatically and any line work that I put down in that template. AutoCAD will automatically open up the very last template you ever used. So if I just click on this new drawing, it's just going to continue to open up that same template file, even if I put a bunch of new lines in here. And let me switch myself over to a layer that's just a little easier to see me put lines down in. So if I put a bunch of new lines in here and I hit escape and I close it, and even here I'll say sure, save changes to drawing 4. So I'll save a copy of this drawing. Now when I click on new, it still doesn't care that I put all of those different lines in there. It just opened it up with whatever I had it saved as when I initially saved it as a template file. So that's where templates can be very helpful. And if you ever want to get out of your template and just get back to a completely blank AutoCAD drawing with no layers, no line work in it, no settings at all, you'll just come to the Start tab. And again, the keyboard's in the way. And just click on the word template, and you'll want this one just called ACAD DWT. And that'll open up a completely blank, fresh AutoCAD drawing with no settings or layers installed. And then every time you click on that plus tab, it'll always open up a completely blank AutoCAD drawing with no settings done or layers done. So for your assignment for this particular step in the module is there is a file for you to download where it just has some instructions of different layers and settings for your layers to set up. So you're just going to go and fill in as the table instructs you to and create different layers with the different plot settings, color settings, line types, and line weights. You'll save it as a template file, and then you will upload it to Canvas to submit for grading. And as always, if you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll see you in the next one.